It's Michelle Nesky, the Posh PA, and today I'm going to tell you how to avoid the 3 biggest mistakes in your CASPA application. So CASPA is the centralized application service for physician assistants, and that is how you apply to PA school, right? So it's important to put your best foot forward when applying because mistakes can be costly, not only literally costly, but costly in terms of your ability to get accepted into a program. So today I'm going to talk to you about the 3 biggest mistakes that I see applicants making when it comes to the CASPA application. Let's get started. But before I do that, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button here because I am here every single week with new videos on not only how to help you get into PA school, but how you help you be a successful student and a fulfilled practicing PA. All right, so let's talk about these 3 biggest mistakes that I see applicants making and that you want to avoid in your PA school application. And number 1 is the one that you're probably not going to like me to say, but it's the first mistake is not knowing your GPA, okay? So one of the biggest mistakes that I see applicants make is they rely on their college transcript and that number GPA to be what their CASPA GPA is. Now I have another video on how to calculate your CASPA GPA and how important that is, in this process because CASPA calculates every single grade you've ever taken into an overall GPA and a science GPA, okay? So what is on your transcript may not match what will be your CASPA GPA, and in some cases might put you below the minimum requirement, okay? Most programs require a 3.0 minimum overall science or prerequisite GPA. Programs have different GPAs that they look at, so be sure to be checking that. But as a rule, 3.0 is typically the cutoff. Now, there are some programs that have a 2.75 or a 3.2, but for the most part, it's a 3.0. So if your college transcript says that your GPA is a 3.0, there's a chance when you put that in CASPA that it will be a 2.9. And if you fall below the minimum requirement, your application will not get looked at, okay? The same goes for science GPAs and any prerequisite GPA that a program might require. Not knowing your GPA before you apply is probably one of the most common mistakes that I see because we just rely on what our transcripts show and you're like, oh, well, I have a 3.3 from here and then I took a couple classes here and I did okay and then I did a couple classes here and I did okay. So I think it's going to be this and I'm going to be good. Don't think it, know it. Okay? Because the last thing you want to do is spend your time and your money and your mental energy going into this and then falling below the minimum. So make sure that you are calculating your CASPA GPA before you apply, because if you do have to make an adjustment, you can. If you have to take additional classes or whatever it is that you have to do to kind of make sure you're going to be above that level. So that is number 1. And again, I do have another YouTube video on that. So be sure to check that out here on the channel, but make sure you know that you're hitting the minimum requirements that you need for your programs when you are calculating your CASPA GPA. Don't rely on just your college transcripts, okay? That leads me to number 2, which is the second most common mistake, and that's missing program requirements. It is very complicated to apply to PA school because there are a lot of different requirements for different programs, okay? And so that's why when I see people or I work with applicants that tell me I'm going to apply to 40 schools, I cringe because what inevitably happens is that you're going to miss a requirement. You're going to miss one because there's a lot of them, okay? And I'm not just talking about prerequisite requirements. So that's number 1, your prerequisite requirements, right? But I'm talking about requirements of expiration dates on your coursework. Some programs are 5 years, some are 7, some are 10, okay? Letters of recommendation requirements, shadowing requirements, deadlines, standardized test requirements, all of these things that you might miss if you have a high volume of programs that you are applying to. You also want to make sure that your prerequisites fit what the program requires. There are some programs that if you took a general psychology class and they require abnormal psych, they won't take that. Okay, you had to have taken abnormal psych, right? So you want to make sure if there's a question at all about a prerequisite that you took, that you're contacting the program and making sure that your course fits their requirement. Okay, so it doesn't happen often, but just make sure, just know that that's a possibility, and make sure you're looking at all the other program requirements and that you don't want to miss. Again, I listed them very quickly, but they're not limited to these as well, but expiration dates, letter of recommendation, volunteer hours, shadowing hours, patient care hours, okay? You wanna make sure that you're hitting all the requirements. It's very easy to miss one, particularly when you're applying to, even 10 programs, it's easy to miss one of those. And if you miss one, that program is out, okay? So you need to make sure you're double and triple checking these things and making sure you have everything locked in for the programs that you want, which is why I always recommend, in my opinion, not to apply to like more than 15 programs. That's just my opinion, throwing it out there. Okay, third mistake that I see made very often in this process is getting really excited, rushing through your application and submitting it when it's not yet complete, okay? CASPA has a process, all right? So when you submit your application will say submitted in CASPA. And then once it's submitted and all of your transcripts are there, letters of record are there, everything, then it moves to completed. Then it moves into a verification phase, okay? Make sure you know the steps of CASPA and the verification process. They have an excellent help center on the CASPA website. So that goes through all of this. So just make sure. But you're excited, you're getting everything in, and you're like, I'm gonna submit, yet you don't have all your letters of rec in, and you don't have your transcripts there. What happens then is you won't get verified, okay? Your application will kind of sit there, right? So you wanna make sure you're submitting your application when you have at least 2 to 3 letters of recommendation already in there, okay? Already in and set to go. And then making sure your transcripts are there, and so that when you submit your application, you will move into the completed phase and then into the verification process. The verification process can take a few days. They even say up to 2 weeks on their website. In my experience, I haven't seen it take that long unless there's a problem, but you have to allow time for that, okay? So you want to submit and you want to make sure that you're getting into the verification process as quickly as you can so that then your application can be shown to the programs, okay? So make sure you know the process of CASPA and don't rush through it. Rushing through it leads to big mistakes. I have seen this over and over again with applicants who rush through and they miss something on their transcript, or they missed an experience description, or their personal statement got cut and pasted in the wrong way, or whatever it is, because they just want to get it in, okay? I promise you, if you slow your roll, take it one day at a time and get it in, it's better to get in a very complete application than having to go back and have issues, and that's going to delay your verification process, okay? So you just want to make sure when you submit, you have at least 2 letters of recommendation in there, and your transcripts, if not already there, have been requested and on the way, and so that you can do that, okay? So just wanted to, that's kind of the third one, is just rushing through and not knowing, the process that CASPA has for your application before it even gets shown, to a program. A quick question that I'll just answer that I get a lot too is do you have to apply to all your programs at the same time? No. Okay, so you can apply to certain programs, and then if you're working on supplemental essays and you're not quite ready, you can apply to those programs later. Once your application is verified, it is locked. Okay, so the only thing that you can do is add an experience you can't change what's already in there. Okay. You can add an experience. If you're adding on hours, you can just redo that experience and add say this is additional hours. Or if you had a grade that was planned and in progress, a class, you can add that grade, but it won't be calculated into your GPA. So just two important things to know about that. Like once it's verified, it's locked. You can add, an experience, but your transcripts are going to be locked. Your GPA is already calculated. You can add in a grade from a class that was pending, but it won't be calculated into your GPA. And I can do a separate video on that because it gets a little bit confusing and I don't want to, convolute what I'm trying to convey to you here, which is the top 3 mistakes to avoid in CASPA. So let's recap it. Number 1, please know your GPA before you submit, or a ballpark of your CASPA GPA before you submit so that there are absolutely no surprises. Number 2, make sure you're not missing program requirements. If you need the world's biggest Excel spreadsheet like every pre-PA student does, then do it that way. If you're a paper person and need it on a board, do it that way. And I'm not just talking about courses, but definitely making sure your coursework fits the requirements. Patient care hour requirements, letters of rec requirements, expiration dates. That's one that happens all the time on your prerequisites. Whether or not you can have a class pending, really dig into those program requirements. Okay, that's number 2. And number 3, don't rush the process and make sure that you know the CASPA verification process. I will do a separate video on that. And just so you know that what you're looking for in terms of timeline. If you avoid these mistakes, it will make the process simpler for you, more streamlined, and minimize your anxiety. I hope this video helped you, and I'll see you again next time.